When I was little, my father was famous. He was the greatest samurai in the empire. He cut off the heads of 131 lords. He was the greatest samurai in the empire. And he took me with him.
Hey everybody, somebody sent me a link to a video the other day. I'm sorry I can't recall who it was, but they asked if I could respond to this video. Now this video was 1.5 years old and may have been responded to already. This seems like something Wolfie6020 would have dispatched quite quickly. But I saw this and I got inspired because if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. Whenever a Globe-Denier shows a flaw in the globe model, they reveal their ignorance of that model, which is exactly what this video does. So let's talk about it. In this video, this gentleman makes the claim that these 6 emergency landings during flights are proof of a flat Earth. 2 flights, one from Taiwan and one from Hong Kong, both going to Los Angeles, landed in Alaska. And 4, Chicago to Doha, Qatar, San Francisco to Dubai, Shanghai to Munich, and Islamabad to London, all landed in Moscow. According to him, if the Earth was a globe, the flight paths of these trips would not make Alaska and Moscow sensible places to land, but they do make sense on a flat Earth in his mind. As evidence of the proper globe flight paths, he presents a partially inflated pool toy and a handful of Sharpie scribbles. Seriously, folks, this dude hand draws what he thinks the flight paths of these planes should be on a beach ball. Does he look up the flight paths of these planes? No. Does he purchase an actual globe to demonstrate his claim? No. This is what he does. And I would dismiss this right off the bat if it hadn't been so heartily endorsed by such globe denial luminaries as Globebusters, Antonio Subarats, and others. Now, I'm not going to go into depth on all 6 of these flights. I'll touch on all of them, but I want to go through the whole thing with this first example. On a flight from Taiwan to Los Angeles, a woman went into labor 6 hours into the 19-hour flight. According to this man, the flight path on the beach ball would go almost directly east across the Pacific Ocean, and it would make more sense to either turn back to Taiwan, go to Japan, or head forward to Hawaii, but not go to Alaska.
6 hours into the flight, they had to land. So the easiest way for her could have been actually Hawaii, right here in the middle. Okay, Hawaii. She could have flown to Japan. She could have, not she, the pilot could have flown back to Taiwan, but they landed in Alaska. Okay, so on a sphere, doesn't really make sense.
This claim shows the general ignorance that globe deniers have of how paths work on the surface of spherical objects, even one that's not a perfect sphere, which the Earth is not. The shortest distance between 2 points over the surface of a sphere is on a circular path with the center of the Earth as the center of that circle. You've heard it referred to as the Great Circle Path. Consider the equator a natural example of a great circle path. The shortest distance between any 2 points on the equator is a path on the equator. Now, even though I know you globe deniers don't trust Google unless you're using it, I'm going to use it now to show the difference in distance between great circle paths, between Taiwan and Los Angeles, and this gentleman's drawings, which I can only approximate here. The distance of a great circle path between these 2 points is 6,883 miles. The distance this man, whom I'll refer to as Banjo from now on, is 7,100 miles. Not a small difference. Now, you may say that my path doesn't reflect Banjo's drawings well enough, but that doesn't matter. As you can see here, the more the path diverges from the Great Circle Path, the farther the distance. The Great Circle Path is the most efficient pathway. And you may have noticed a Great Circle Path actually goes much farther north initially than east, and far away from Hawaii. But as I said before, I know you don't trust Google in the hands of the enemy, so I made this here. This is a great circle path. I have a 12-inch diameter globe here, so I made this foam core cutout that traces a path based on a 12-inch diameter circle. Hey, if Banjo can use a beach ball, I can use foam core. At least I measured. Twice. If I take this tool and put it flush against the globe with the two locations on the path, you can see the path takes us north near Alaska. So when the young lady's water broke a third of the way into the trip, the pilot had basically two sensible options: turn and land in Japan, or go forward to Alaska. But let's take a moment to compare this to the options on a flat Earth map. By the way, I do enjoy the fact that so many Globe-Deniers endorse this joke of a map. They embrace it when they think it helps them, but scurry away when the flaws are pointed out. You can see the path he drew on his map for this trip. I've reproduced it here. On the AE map, it makes perfect sense to head on to Alaska, he says, because it's right on the path. But I need to point out a couple of things. One-third of the way into this flight, this plane would be closer to Japan than on the Great Circle Path would. So it also had that option. But I also want to point out how much of this flight path takes place over land. Now, anyone who's been on a plane at 30,000 feet knows, unless there's cloud cover, you know if you're over land or water. There's no mirage that happens that makes land appear to be ocean. Yet, do Globe-Deniers believe that somehow the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that have taken these flights have never noticed that they were over land? D. Marble went to South Korea and back from Seattle. This is the flight path on the AE map. Do you think if he had noticed he was over land 90% of the time, he wouldn't have mentioned it? Or did his flight path take him over water as the Great Circle Path would take him? Okay, so real quick, I'm going to show you the paths of these other flights on my actual globe with this simple tool that anyone can make, and show you how these flight paths put them in locations where the emergency locations they picked make perfect sense. Now, before I close out, I've got one more emergency landing to add to the mix. Qantas flight QF9 was a nonstop from Perth to London. 2 hours into the 17-hour flight, a disruptive passenger caused them to land the plane. What were their landing options? Well, if they followed a great circle path on a globe, 2 hours into a 17-hour flight would put them about here, in the Indian Ocean. The closest airport is back at Perth. They'd need to turn back. What about on the flat Earth map? Here's the direct path. It seems to me that 2 hours in, this plane would be quite close to the airport at Jakarta. Do I have to tell you where they landed? Perth, of course, because it was closest. A funny thing is, the delay caused by going back to Perth made it so they couldn't just take off again and go on to London. Pilots aren't allowed to work that long, so they had to pay for overnight accommodations for everyone on that flight. If the Earth was flat, if this map was valid, what business sense would it make to not land at Jakarta, dump the bad passenger off with the authorities, and keep on to London without breaking a sweat? That would make no sense. What makes sense, though, is that Perth was the closest airport, because the Earth is a globe, and the flat Earth flight paths don't hold up to reality. This little piece of foam proves it. Huh.
That's my job! That's what I do! I don't lose! I win! Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
Maybe you came by to congratulate me on last night's victory.